Have you ever wondered what happens when justice turns the tables? Racist police officers arrested a black woman at the mall. The next day, she was the judge who presided over the hearing. The handcuffs snapped shut around Diana Santos' wrists, echoing through the mall corridor like a gunshot. At 42, she never imagined that a simple shopping trip would end with her hands locked behind her back while dozens of onlookers stopped to film the scene. "You have the right to remain silent," said Officer Martinez, his voice laden with barely concealed satisfaction. "Anything you say can be used against you in court." Diana took a deep breath, maintaining the composure she had learned over years of dealing with tense situations. "May I know what the charges?" she asked, her voice steady despite the absurd situation. Officer Rodriguez, Martinez's partner, chuckled sarcastically. "Attempted theft. The jewelry store clerk said you were acting suspiciously, touching expensive items and asking questions about prices with no real intention of buying." "That's not a crime," Diana replied calmly, her eyes meeting Martinez's. "Examining products before a purchase is a consumer right." Martinez narrowed his eyes. "Don't play smart with me. We know exactly the kind of person you are." The humiliation burned more than the tight handcuffs. Diana had grown up facing suspicious looks, prejudiced whispers, and the constant need to prove her competence. But never, not even in her worst nightmares, did she imagine she would be treated like a criminal simply for existing in a space where some believed she didn't belong. As she was escorted through the crowded mall, Diana noticed the expressions of passers-by. Some filmed with cell phones, others whispered malicious comments, but few questioned the situation. A black woman in handcuffs was for many confirmation of stereotypes they preferred not to examine. "Look at her. I knew there was something strange about her," an elderly woman whispered to her friend. "Decent women don't stare at expensive jewelry like that." A teenager with a cell phone in his hand laughed quietly. "This is going to be a meme. Just another Karen getting arrested." Diana heard every comment, every hasty judgment, every conclusion based on nothing but deep-rooted prejudice, but her expression remained calm, almost too dignified for the situation. "My purse," Diana said when they reached the entrance. "I need my ID." Rodriguez took the elegant leather bag and rummaged through it unceremoniously. He found credit cards, documents, and a professional ID that he'd barely glanced at. "Everything here can be faked," he muttered to Martinez. At the police station, Diana was processed like any other suspect. Photos, fingerprints, standard forms. The officer on duty, Sergeant Williams, seemed more interested in finishing his shift than properly verifying the information. "Occupation?" he asked, typing mechanically. "Civil servant," Diana replied. Technically true, but without revealing any specific details. Martinez and Rodriguez exchanged knowing glances. To them, she was just another low-level civil servant trying to pass herself off as important. They made no effort to verify her credentials or investigate the original report from the jewelry store. "I bet she works cleaning some government building," Rodriguez whispered to Martinez loud enough for Diana to hear. "Or in a school cafeteria," Martinez replied, chuckling softly. "They always try to make themselves sound more important than they are." Diana remained silent in the temporary cell, watching the movement of the police station through the bars. Her mind was not focused on anger or humiliation, but on something much deeper. Every irregular procedure, every right denied, every look of contempt was being mentally catalogued and filed away. Hours later, when she was finally released on a symbolic bail and given a court date, Diana walked down the nighttime street with steady steps. Her phone vibrated constantly with messages from concerned family members who had seen the videos on social media. But Diana didn't respond to the messages right away. First, she had some important calls to make. People needed to know what had happened. Not for revenge, but for justice. What Martinez and Rodriguez didn't know was that they had just made the biggest professional mistake of their careers. And Diana Santos, with her characteristic calm and decades of experience in a field they couldn't even imagine, was about to teach them a lesson they would never forget. As she walked under the city lights, an almost imperceptible smile appeared on her lips. Tomorrow would be a very interesting day. The kind of day that would forever change the definition of public servant in the minds of those two arrogant police officers. Stay tuned, because what happened next will shock you, only on Black Voices. The next morning, Diana woke up to dozens of notifications on her cell phone. The video of her arrest had spread across social media like wildfire. Black woman arrested for looking at expensive jewelry already had over 200,000 views. The comments were a mixture of outrage and confirmation of deep-rooted prejudices. "This is blatant racism," wrote one user. "She must have done something," replied another. "The police don't arrest people for nothing." Diana read each comment with the same serenity with which she had faced the handcuffs. 23 years of dealing with similar cases had taught her that public opinion was volatile, but justice, when properly applied, was permanent. Her daughter, Amanda, a medical student at the university, called her in tears. "Mom, everyone here has seen the video. They're saying horrible things online. How are you managing to stay so calm?" "Because I know who I am," Diana replied softly. "And tomorrow, some people will find out, too." Meanwhile, at the police station, Martinez and Rodriguez became instant celebrities among their colleagues. The viral video had reached them, and far from feeling ashamed, they were enjoying the attention. "Check this out." Martinez showed his phone to Rodriguez. "People are calling us heroes. Brave cops arrest arrogant suspect. These people know how to recognize a job well done." Rodriguez laughed, reading the supportive comments. There are always those crime defenders complaining, but anyone who knows the reality of the streets knows we did the right thing. That woman was clearly out of her element. Sergeant Williams walked past their table, shaking his head. "Did you guys see she has a court date tomorrow? I bet she'll show up with some cheap lawyer trying to make a drama out of this." "Let her try." Martinez shrugged. "We have everything documented. Attempted robbery, suspicious behavior, resisting arrest. The judge will dismiss this in 5 minutes." What they didn't know was that Diana had spent the night making strategic phone calls, not to lawyers, but to people who would understand exactly what had happened and why. At 8 in the morning, she received a call from Dr. Thompson, a district attorney and former colleague. "Diana, I just saw the video. This is unbelievable. Do you want me to?" "No," Diana interrupted him. "Thank you, but I want this to go through the normal channels. Just make sure the hearing is public and that there is a complete record." Dr. Thompson hesitated. "Are you sure? I can handle this with a phone call." "I'm sure." Diana smiled, an expression Thompson knew well. Some lessons need to be taught the hard way. In the afternoon, Diana visited her old law school where she maintained an office as a visiting professor. His students, who had seen the video, greeted her with a mixture of concern and outrage. "Professor Santos," said Marcus, a young black third-year student, "what they did to you is exactly what we study in class about judicial bias. How can you keep your faith in the system?" Diana looked at the class, each face reflecting a personal experience with injustice. "Because I know the system can work when the right people are in the right places. And sometimes," she paused significantly, "those people are already there waiting for the right moment to act." That night, Martinez posted a photo of himself and Rodriguez at the police station on social media with the caption, "Another day protecting good citizens from dangerous elements. #RealPolice #public safety." The post received hundreds of likes from supporters, but also dozens of critical comments that Martinez systematically deleted. "These politically correct people don't understand how the streets work," he commented to Rodriguez. "Tomorrow, that woman will understand what happens when you mess with the wrong people," Rodriguez added. "I bet the judge will teach her a lesson she won't forget." Diana, reading Martinez's posts on her computer, allowed herself a genuine smile for the first time in 2 days. Every arrogant word, every show of contempt, every sign that they completely underestimated the situation was being carefully filed away. She opened her drawer and took out an official document with her name printed at the top. She ran her fingers over the gold lettering, remembering the day she had taken her oath 23 years ago. She never imagined she would use her position in this way, but she had never been humiliated like this before either. The phone rang. It was her judicial assistant confirming the next day's schedule. Judge Santos, your first hearing is scheduled for 9 in the morning. It's a simple case of attempted robbery. The officers are Martinez and Rodriguez from the 30th Precinct. Perfect, Diana replied, her voice carrying a satisfaction her assistant couldn't quite identify. Make sure the courtroom is full, and let the press know the hearing will be open to the public. Every humiliation suffered, every look of contempt received, every prejudiced comment heard was about to find its answer. But what Martinez and Rodriguez couldn't even imagine was that the civil servant they despised so much was about to teach them a lesson about respect, justice, and the consequences of judging a book by its cover. Get ready, because the courtroom drama that unfolds next will leave you speechless, only on Black Voices. On the morning of the hearing, Diana arrived at the courthouse at 7:30 a.m., 2 hours before the scheduled time. Her routine had been the same for 23 years. Review each case thoroughly, check legal precedents, and mentally prepare herself for the decisions that shaped lives. But today was different. Today, she was on the other side of the system she had served for decades. Her assistant, Margaret, a 50-year-old woman who had worked at the courthouse for almost 30 years, noticed something unusual in the judge's behavior. Dr. Santos, you seem different today. Are you all right? Diana smiled, organizing the documents on her desk. Margaret, in all these years working together, have you ever seen me lose my composure in a hearing? Never, Dr. Santos. You're known for your serenity, even in the most complex cases. Then you can be sure today will be no different, Diana replied. But there was something in her eyes that Margaret recognized. The same intensity that appeared when she dealt with cases of flagrant injustice. While Diana was getting ready, Martinez and Rodriguez arrived at the police station celebrating in advance. The viral video had turned the two into minor local celebrities among the more conservative officers. Man, look how many likes our post got. Rodriguez showed his phone excitedly. 800 likes and the comments are hilarious. Good job putting that snob in her place. We need more cops like you. Martinez laughed as he read them. This one's the best. I bet she'll never walk into a jewelry store again thinking she deserves to be there. People get it. Sergeant Williams approached, shaking his head. Did you guys see the press waiting outside the courthouse? Looks like her case made national news. Even better, Martinez shrugged. When the judge dismisses this charade, it'll be clear to everyone that we did our job right. That woman needs to learn to accept the consequences of her actions. What they didn't know was that Diana had spent the previous night making strategic phone calls to key people, not to ask for favors, but to ensure that everything was properly documented. Dr. Thompson, the district attorney, had called again that morning. Diana, are you sure you don't want me to make things easier? I can have those officers face more serious charges. Thompson, Diana replied calmly. In 23 years on the bench, have you ever seen me ask to make things easier? Never. You've always been the most principled of us all. Then trust me now. Just make sure the media has full access to the hearing. Complete transparency. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Diana received a call from Sarah Mitchell, an investigative reporter for the local station and a former law school classmate. Diana, I saw the video. This is absurd. Do you want to give an interview before the hearing? Sarah, you've known me for 20 years. When have I ever wanted to use my position for my own gain? Never. You've always been too impartial, even annoying at times. Sarah laughed nervously. Then just do your job as a journalist. Document everything that happens today. And Sarah, you might want to bring your best camera crew. Sarah sensed something in her friend's voice. Diana, what aren't you telling me? You'll find out at the hearing, along with everyone else. Meanwhile, Martinez posted another update on social media. A photo of him and Rodriguez in front of the police station with the caption, "Time to teach a liar some respect for authority." #RealJustice #PoliceInAction. The post received dozens of likes immediately, including from other officers in the department. The comments were even more revealing. Break her at the hearing. These people need to learn who's boss. Congratulations for not being afraid of political correctness. Rodriguez shared the post, adding, "Some people think that titles or money are above the law. Today, we're going to prove them wrong." In the courtroom, the cleaning crew was finishing up. The supervisor, Mr. Johnson, a 60-year-old black man who had worked at the courthouse for 15 years, stopped to chat with Margaret. "Dr. Santos seems different today," he commented, "more focused." Margaret nodded. "She always gets like that when something really important is happening. Remember the case of that businessman who tried to bribe the jury?" She had the exact same expression. "And how did that case end?" "The businessman lost everything. He went bankrupt, was sent to prison, and never recovered. Dr. Santos doesn't tolerate injustice, no matter who's guilty." At 8:45, Diana made her last call. It was to the presiding judge, Dr. Reynolds, her mentor and friend for decades. "Thomas, I need you to know that today may be unusual. Diana, you've never had to warn me about a hearing before. What's going on? Let's just say that today I'm going to remember why I chose this profession 23 years ago." Dr. Reynolds was silent for a moment. "Do you want me to accompany you to the hearing? I would be honored by your presence." With 10 minutes to go before the hearing began, Diana adjusted her judicial robe one last time. In the mirror of her office, she saw not just a judge, but a woman who had dedicated her entire life to a system that on the previous Thursday had failed her in the most humiliating way possible. But today, that same system would have the opportunity to redeem itself. And Diana Santos, with all her experience, dignity, and authority accumulated over 2 decades and 3 years of impeccable service, was about to remind everyone present why justice, when properly applied, is the most powerful force there is. It was when everyone laughed at the handcuffed civil servant that something extraordinary began to take shape. Not only in the corridors of the courthouse, but mainly in the determined gaze of a woman who was about to turn her greatest humiliation into the most unforgettable lesson about respect and consequences that those 2 arrogant police officers could ever imagine. At 9 o'clock sharp, Martinez and Rodriguez entered the courtroom with confident smiles on their faces. The room was packed: journalists, activists, onlookers, and even other police officers who had come to support their colleagues. The buzz was constant. "Look at this," Martinez whispered to Rodriguez. "It's like a circus. Better yet, when this charade is over, everyone will see that we did our job right." Rodriguez nodded to some fellow officers in the audience. "I bet in an hour, we'll be drinking beer and celebrating another being put in her place." Prosecutor Dr. Thompson, discreetly positioned in a side chair, watched everything with an expression that mixed anticipation and nervousness. He had worked with Diana for years and knew that her apparent calm always preceded something significant. Sarah Mitchell, the investigative reporter, adjusted her camera to capture all angles. "Cameraman, focus on the judge's entrance. I have a feeling this is going to be historic." At 9:05, the bailiff rose. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Diana Santos presiding in the 12th Criminal Court." Martinez and Rodriguez rose automatically, still talking quietly about their plans for after the hearing. It wasn't until they saw the woman in black robes entering through the side door that the world stopped. The silence in the room was deafening. Diana walked with her usual dignity to the judge's chair, her eyes calmly scanning the room before settling on the 2 police officers who are now as pale as paper. "You may be seated," she said in her calm, authoritative voice. Martinez felt his legs go weak. Rodriguez had to hold on to the table in front of him. The murmuring in the audience grew into a low roar of surprise and anticipation. Silence in the courtroom. Diana banged her gavel once, and the sound echoed like a gunshot. "We are here to hear the case of the state versus Diana Santos, charged with attempted theft by officers Martinez and Rodriguez." The irony of the situation was so intense that some journalists began to write frantically. Diana was literally presiding over her own case. "Officers Martinez and Rodriguez," Diana called them, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Present your statements regarding the events of last Thursday." Martinez tried to speak, but only a strangled noise came out of his throat. Rodriguez was visibly shaking. "Trouble speaking, officers?" Diana asked, arching an eyebrow. That's strange. You seemed quite articulate on social media. Dr. Thompson stood up. Your Honor, I would like to present as evidence the public posts made by Officers Martinez and Rodriguez about this case. Diana nodded. Granted, have them read aloud. The prosecutor grabbed printouts of the posts. Another day protecting good citizens from dangerous elements, he read from Martinez's post, and from Officer Rodriguez, some people think that title or money is above the law. Today we're going to prove them wrong. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Diana banged her gavel again. Interesting, she said, her voice icy. It seems the officers had already determined my guilt before the hearing even began. Officer Martinez, can you explain why you refer to a citizen with no criminal record as a dangerous element? Martinez finally managed to speak, his voice almost inaudible. We didn't know. Didn't know what? Diana interrupted. That I was a judge or that every citizen deserves to be treated with dignity regardless of her profession. Rodriguez tried to intervene. Your Honor, we followed standard protocol. Standard protocol, Diana repeated, her voice rising for the first time. Handcuffing me without properly checking my identification is protocol. Denying me the right to a phone call is protocol. Searching my vehicle without a warrant is protocol. The cameras captured every second. The room was silent except for the clicking of cameras. Diana continued, her voice returning to a professional tone, but laden with authority. For 23 years, I have presided over this court with impartiality. Today, ironically, I find myself in the position of judging my own case, and I must say that the evidence against the defendants is overwhelming. She picked up a folder. We have here the viral video that clearly shows the disproportionate treatment. We have the social media posts demonstrating bias and prejudgment. And we have the police report that proves negligence in verifying identity. Martinez tried one last desperate card. Your Honor, how can you preside over your own case? Isn't that irregular? Diana smiled for the first time. Officer Martinez, you're right. Normally, it would be irregular. However, since you and your partner failed to follow basic protocols, including proper ID verification, you technically didn't know you were arresting a judge. Therefore, there is no conflict of interest, only incompetence. The audience couldn't contain their muffled laughter. Martinez and Rodriguez looked like children being scolded. However, Diana continued, to ensure complete transparency, I have called in Chief Judge Reynolds to oversee the proceedings. Dr. Reynolds, Diana's mentor, rose from the audience. Judge Santos' decision is correct and within all legal norms. Diana banged the gavel. Considering the evidence presented, the social media posts demonstrating bias, and the flagrant negligence of the officers in following basic protocols, I find that there is no legal basis for the charges. Case dismissed. She paused, looking directly at Martinez and Rodriguez. I further recommend that this court forward a report to the Police Internal Affairs Division for investigation of misconduct. The gavel came down for the last time, echoing like a final decree. It was at that moment that Martinez and Rodriguez understood the extent of their downfall. Not only had they lost the case in the most humiliating way possible, but their careers were effectively over. The cameras had captured everything. And within hours, they would go from social media heroes to national symbols of police bias and incompetence. 6 months after the hearing that changed everything, Diana Santos walked through the corridors of the same mall where she had been humiliated. But this time, she wasn't just any customer. She was the keynote speaker at the Justice and Dignity in the Digital Age conference, organized by the mall's management. The irony? The jewelry store manager, the one who had made the false accusation, now worked as a salesperson in a department store in the basement after the jewelry store lost its license for discriminatory practices proven by the investigation that followed the viral case. Dr. Santos, said the mall director, accompanying her to the packed auditorium. We don't know how to thank you for accepting our invitation. Your story has transformed our approach to diversity and inclusion. Diana smiled serenely. Sometimes the best lessons come from the most painful experiences. In the auditorium, more than 500 people awaited her: business leaders, activists, students, and surprisingly dozens of police officers who had volunteered for the unconscious bias training that was now mandatory statewide. Meanwhile, Martinez and Rodriguez faced a very different reality. After being fired from the force, Martinez tried to work as a private security guard, but every time potential employers Googled his name, they found the viral videos of his fall. No company wanted to associate its image with national symbols of prejudice. Rodriguez had moved to another state, trying to start over, but the internet has a long memory. His arrogant posts were compiled into documentaries about institutional racism, ensuring that his shame would be immortalized. "What impacts me the most is not the arrest itself," Diana said into the microphone, her voice echoing through the silent auditorium, "but the revelation of how people can be judged and condemned in a matter of seconds based solely on appearances and prejudice." In the audience, Sarah Mitchell, the journalist who had covered the entire case, smiled proudly. The documentary she had produced about Diana's story had just won a National Investigative Journalism Award. Dr. Thompson, the prosecutor, approached the stage after the lecture. "Diana, I have news. The governor signed the Diana Santos law today. Every police officer in the state now has to undergo civil rights certification before taking office." Diana nodded, moved, but composed. "It's a start." A young black police officer in the audience raised his hand. "Miss Santos, how did you manage to maintain your dignity throughout that whole situation?" Diana looked at him with maternal affection. "Because I learned a long time ago that our response to injustice defines us more than the injustice itself. We can choose to be victims or catalysts for change." After the event, Diana received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Reynolds, her mentor. "Diana, the Supreme Court is considering your nomination for a vacancy that will open next year. Your history of integrity and your work on judicial reform have attracted national attention." Meanwhile, in a small house in the suburbs, Martinez watched the news about Diana's possible Supreme Court nomination. His wife had filed for divorce months ago, tired of the public shame. He lived alone now, carrying the weight of having destroyed not only his own career, but also the life of an innocent person who had proven to be infinitely superior to him in every way. Rodriguez, working as a night security guard at a parking lot in another state, watched the news on his cell phone during his lonely rounds. The pay barely covered the rent on a small apartment. His arrogance had cost him everything: his career, his respect, his future. Diana returned to her office that night, looking out the window at the city that now knew her not as a victim, but as a symbol that justice, when properly applied, has the power to transform wounds into bridges. Her assistant Margaret entered with a stack of invitations. "Dr. Santos, universities across the country are asking you to give lectures. Harvard, Yale, Stanford. Accept all the ones we can fit into the schedule," Diana replied. "If my experience can prevent this from happening to someone else, it's worth it." Margaret smiled. "You know, you've become an inspiration to thousands of people, right? That video of your arrest is now used in law schools as an example of how the system can fail, but also how people of integrity can fix it." 3 years after the humiliation at the mall, Diana Santos was confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. On the day of the inauguration ceremony, Martinez watched on television in a small apartment alone, reflecting on how a moment of prejudice had cost him his entire life. Rodriguez, who had returned to his hometown after losing yet another job, commented bitterly to a friend at the bar. "That woman destroyed our lives." "Man," his friend replied, "you destroyed yourselves. She just showed the world who you really are." Diana had learned that the best revenge is not to destroy those who hurt you, but to build something so great that your achievements completely overshadow any attempt to diminish you. She turned her greatest humiliation into the foundation of a career that would change the justice system of an entire country. And when people asked her how she managed to overcome it all, Diana always replied with a serene smile. "They tried to judge me by the color of my skin. But time has judged them by the content of their character." True justice, after all, is not about making our enemies pay for their mistakes. It's about achieving such extraordinary success that they spend the rest of their lives wondering how they could have underestimated someone so masterful. If this story of overcoming adversity and justice has touched your heart, Subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that prove that dignity always triumphs over ignorance and that sometimes the universe uses our pain as fuel for something much greater than we could ever imagine possible, only on Black Voices.